Hi, my name is Corey, and this is my daughter.
Emerson.
And today we're doing our first YouTube video on the daily Mass readings. So Emerson, we just read the readings, which looks like we read from Deuteronomy 4. And these are the readings for tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 7th of March. And the first reading is from Deuteronomy, where Moses takes the people out of Egypt and he kind of gives them something. So what was that about?
It was when, in the Old Testament, Moses gave the people some laws, and
Where were they going? Where was he taking them?
Israel.
Oh, okay. So he took them out of Egypt, and they were in the desert, and then they were coming over to Israel.
Yeah.
And he gave them the laws.
Yes.
What do you think? Why did he give them all these statutes, these laws, these decrees from
so
God?
that they would listen.
Okay. Yeah, probably a good idea, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of God's given them a kind of a map, right? It's kind of a way of that He wants them to obey His will. And so the New Testament reading from today is from the Gospel, right? The Gospel of Matthew. And in chapter 5, Jesus tells His disciples, He says, hey, don't think that I've come here to get rid of that law that Moses gave you or the prophets, but I've come not to abolish it, but to fulfill it.
Yes.
What do you think He means by I've come to fulfill the law?
Maybe help it or make it so that it is still going on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he obviously, if the old law was sufficient, then there would have really been no reason for Jesus to come and do what He did, right? God came down from heaven and took on our form. He took on a human being. He was incarnate, and of course, when He came, He changed some things, and but He says, I didn't come to get rid of that. And He says, what did He say? He says, not the smallest letter or the smallest part of a letter will pass from the law until all things have taken place. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do so will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever obeys and teaches these commandments will be called greatest in the kingdom of heaven. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think He's saying?
I don't really know.
Don't know?
No.
I think what He's really getting at is that even though I've come to fulfill them, he is the fulfillment of what Moses was saying. He came and established some new laws. There was one point where the disciples, where He was telling them, the old law was that you shouldn't murder someone.
Yes.
But in the new law, He says, if you even look at your brother in anger, and I'm not saying it right, but if you're just angry at your brother, that's kind of like murder. You've broken the commandment.
It is?
Right. So He's talking about an inward change. Kind of like if you how man and a woman are made to have babies, right?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like that. In the Old Testament, you weren't supposed to do what a husband and his wife do together that makes a baby. You weren't supposed to, for example, if you're married, do that with another woman. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
But Jesus in the New Testament says you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't even think about that, because if you've done it in your mind, in your heart, you've already done it. Did you know that?
No, I did not. But now I do.
Now you know. So we need to control our thoughts, and we need to know that Jesus, when He came, He's the new priest. He's the new law, as Hebrews Hebrews chapter 7 says. And actually, why don't we can go into that later, but you get the point. Jesus came to fulfill the law, but He also established some new laws, and we're bound by them as Christians.
Yes.
All right. So that was our first YouTube video. We'll have to figure out how to handle the format and the back and forth. But again, my name is Corey, and this is
Emerson.
And thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.